My friends set me up on a blind date with my stalker and he followed me home. I was already a few wines deep when I caught them giggling and whispering about whether he would show up. My stomach dropped when they revealed they'd invited their coworker John as a surprise setup for me. Sarah started gushing about him being 6'1" with dark hair and a successful sales career. She mentioned his French speaking and his dog Murphy. Each detail made my blood run colder because I knew exactly who she was describing. I asked if he drove a black BMW and worked in tech. Her excited confirmation made me want to throw up. I showed them his Instagram and watched their faces change as I said, this was the man who stalked me last year. The same one I'd told them all about. Started showing up at my work unannounced, telling my colleagues we were together. He'd text me about conversations I had in coffee shops, asking who I was talking to, left notes on my car saying I was the light of his life. The police agreed it was serious enough for a restraining order. I heard car tires on the gravel outside and knew I had to run. Without a word, I walked calmly through the party and into the back garden. 7-foot fence surrounded the entire property with no gate in sight. I kicked off my heels and jumped for the top of the fence while hammered and panicking. Somehow I caught the edge and hauled myself over. My dress caught on a nail and ripped as I fell face first into. I heard people calling my name from the party, so I ran barefoot down the dirt track with my dress hanging off one shoulder and blood on my face from the fall. I didn't stop running until I reached my front door, barricaded myself inside, and turned off all the lights thinking I was safe. Then I heard footsteps on my driveway. I ran upstairs and hid in the bathroom where I could see the driveway from the window. John was there, but Sarah was with him. My friend who knew everything about the stalking and restraining order was helping him find me. She called out saying they were worried because I left so suddenly, begging me to come down and talk. I stayed silent in the dark bathroom praying they would leave. Then I heard Sarah say something that made me. I watched in horror as she walked straight to the fake rock by my front steps and pulled out my house key. The same hiding spot I'd shown her last month when she came over for dinner. She was really going to let my stalker into my house. As I heard the key turn in the lock, I called 911 and whispered my address saying my stalker was breaking in. The dispatcher told me to stay hidden and stay on the line. I could hear them downstairs now with Sarah calling my name like we were playing hide and seek. John's voice made me shake when he said he just wanted to talk and that Sarah told him I was playing hard to get, that I didn't really mean the restraining order. Sarah actually laughed and said I was probably just embarrassed about running away. I watched from the window as they ran to his BMW and sped away just as the police pulled up. The officers found me still hiding in the bathroom. After I explained everything, they put out alerts for both John and Sarah. Violation of a restraining order and breaking and entering were serious charges. Later that night, Sarah texted me acting confused about why I called the police. She claimed she was just trying to help and that John seemed so nice and normal. She said I overreacted and ruined her reputation with our friend group. That's how I found out she was dating him and realized she was in just as much danger as me. I stared at my phone screen in disbelief. Blood from the fence cuts dripped onto the glass, mixing with tears I hadn't realized. Who had held me while I cried after getting the restraining order was now with the man who had terrorized me. My hands shook as I tried calling her, straight to voicemail. I typed out a text with trembling fingers. The words blurred through my tears, but I managed to send a simple message asking if she was safe and warning her that he was dangerous. My phone buzzed immediately with a response, but it wasn't from Sarah's number. The unknown number's message made my stomach drop. John had seen everything I'd said about him. Sarah had shown him our conversations. He wanted to talk. I screenshot the message and backed away from the bathroom window, suddenly feeling exposed despite the darkness. My phone lit up with notification after notification, curled up on his couch with Murphy at her feet. The caption read, "My hero," with a heart emoji. The same apartment where I'd found hidden cameras after our 4th date. The same couch where he'd first grabbed my wrist too hard when I tried to leave. I took screenshots of everything, my lawyer's warnings echoing in my mind about documenting any contact. The police were looking for them now, but Sarah clearly had no idea. She was posting like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just helped the man with a restraining order break into my home. Emma called while I was still processing. Her voice cracked as she apologized over and over. Sarah had begged her to invite John to the party, told her I was being dramatic about the past and that John deserved a second chance. Wait for the police to handle it, or warn our friends immediately. My phone battery was already down to 15% from all the calls and messages flooding in. I opened our group chat and typed out the truth. John had violated his restraining order. Sarah had helped him break into my home. Everyone needed to stay away from both of them. The The response was immediate and brutal. 3 friends left the chat without a word. Megan's message popped up calling me a drama queen, saying I was jealous that Sarah had found happiness. My phone died mid-response, the screen going black just as more messages poured in. I grabbed my laptop from the bedroom, hands still shaking as I logged into Facebook. The first thing I saw made me want to scream, complete with dozens of congratulations from mutual friends who had no idea what they were celebrating. My fingers moved without thinking, typing out a comment on her relationship announcement. Just the facts. He had a restraining order against him for stalking. The comment lasted less than 30 seconds before it vanished. When I tried to check her profile again, I was blocked. I switched to LinkedIn, remembering John's obsession with professional networking. His profile showed recent activity that made my skin crawl. Over the past week, he'd connected with my boss, 3 coworkers, and 2 clients. His bio had been updated to mention overcoming adversity and false accusations through perseverance. My mother's call interrupted my spy. Her voice broke when she asked if it was the same man. I couldn't hold back anymore. The tears came hard and fast as I told her everything that had happened tonight. After we hung up, I remembered the security camera. My hands fumbled with the Ring app until I found the footage. There it was, in perfect clarity. Sarah walking up my driveway, going straight to the fake rock, pulling out my spare key, John standing behind her, watching. I saved it to 3 different cloud storage services and emailed copies to myself. My phone had charged enough to turn back on, and Katie's texts filled the screen. She was still at the party and Sarah was there now, telling everyone I was jealous, claiming I couldn't handle seeing her with my ex. Half the group believed. Barricaded in my bedroom with a chair against the door. Every sound made me jump. Every car passing by sent me to the window. When morning finally came, I was exhausted but determined to face whatever came next. Derek called while I was making coffee. My boyfriend's voice was strained and confused. Sarah had called him at 6 in the morning before he left for his business trip. She told him I was having obsession issues, that maybe I needed professional help, that she was worried about my mental state. I scrolled through old messages while Derek was talking, finding the texts I needed. Just last month, Sarah had called John terrifying. She'd thanked God for restraining orders. She'd promised to always watch out for me. Clearly set up before last night's incident, claiming I was harassing his girlfriend. My boss had forwarded it, asking for an explanation. The timestamp showed it was scheduled days ago. He'd been planning this. I arrived at work to find an unfamiliar sedan in my usual parking spot. Security mentioned someone had arrived early, claiming to be interviewing for a sales position. They'd taken my spot and been sitting in their car for an hour. I parked elsewhere and hurried inside, the feeling of being watched crawling up my spine. The HR manager called me in before I even reached my desk. She was all sympathy and concern, mentioning that she'd heard about my personal situation. Her husband golfed with John's uncle. Sometimes a little time away helped everyone, she said. I drove to Sarah's apartment complex during lunch, needing to understand how this had happened. Her car wasn't in its usual spot. Newspapers were piling up outside her door. The neighbor mentioned she'd been staying somewhere else for the past few days, said Sarah had been acting different lately since she started dating someone new, stopped jogging alone, always checking her phone, seemed nervous. That's when I saw it. Walking past Sarah's car in the visitor section, something caught my eye. A small black device attached under the rear bumper, the same type of tracking device I'd found on my car last year. The same brand John had used to follow me everywhere. I took photos. John had done the same thing to Sarah that he'd done to me, moved fast, introduced her to his family and friends immediately, made her feel special and chosen. But now he was tracking her car. Now she was staying at his place instead of her own apartment. Now she was nervous and checking her phone constantly. My phone buzzed with a text from Becca, Sarah's roommate. She was worried. Sarah had changed her phone password and wouldn't talk to her anymore. Something was off about John, but she couldn't put her finger on it. I sent her the photo of the tracking device. Becca's response was immediate. Sarah had told her John required her to share her location at all times for safety. He said it was because he cared so much and wanted to. Katie texted while I was driving back to work. She'd been thinking about everything and was starting to question Sarah's version of events. She'd watched John talk about me at the party after I left, and something in his eyes had made her uncomfortable. The way he spoke about me was too intense, too personal for someone who supposedly barely knew me. An old Instagram account appeared in my notifications that afternoon. The profile picture was blank, but the username made my blood run cold. It was supposedly mine, created months ago, filled with threatening messages to John, dated before last night's break-in. The timestamps were clearly fabricated, but the writing style mimicked mine perfectly. I recognized his pattern immediately. The same your mistakes he always made in. We'd worked together 2 years ago before she suddenly quit and moved away. Her voice trembled as she explained why she was calling. She'd dated John before me. He'd done the exact same thing to her. She had proof. Emma texted while Lisa was sharing her story. John had contacted her asking for my new phone number, claiming he needed it for legal documentation. She'd refused, but the pressure was mounting. He was systematically contacting everyone in our circle. I spent the rest of the afternoon backing up evidence to multiple cloud services and physical drives. Every screenshot, every message, every piece of documentation went into folders I shared with trusted friends. The pattern Lisa described matched mine exactly. The fast core. They'd issued warrants for both John and Sarah but needed help locating them. I was to call immediately if I saw either one. The charges were serious, violation of a restraining order and breaking and entering, but they had to find them first. Lisa and I met at a coffee shop that evening. She brought court documents from her case showing John's behavior pattern across 3 victims. Sarah would be the 4th. The timeline was always the same: intense romance, quick isolation, tracking devices, then legal threats when they tried to escape. He usually proposed after 3 months to lock them in legally. Back home, I discovered John had registered a domain with Sarah's name weeks ago. The website was already live, portraying me as an anyone Googling my name would find it immediately. A message from John's former coworker arrived through LinkedIn. He'd been fired from his last job for harassment after using his girlfriend's key card to stalk a female colleague. The company had kept it quiet to avoid scandal, but people knew. The pattern went back years. I created a private folder titled Pattern of Behavior and began organizing everything chronologically. No public posts, no inflammatory accusations, just calm documentation of facts. Lisa had taught me this approach. Courts responded better to organized evidence than emotional outbursts. Sarah's birthday was in 2 weeks. John was making her feel obligated to stay. Becca called me panicking that night. She'd overheard John on the phone talking about engagement rings. His exact words chilled us both. Once they were engaged, she couldn't testify against him. Sarah was almost ready to say yes. The 3-month timeline Lisa had warned about was right on schedule. The next morning at the coffee shop, I overheard 2 customers discussing a couple they'd seen at a gas station near the state border. The description matched John and Sarah perfectly. They'd been arguing, and the woman looked scared. I called the detective immediately, but by the time police arrived, they were gone. John's lawyer contacted me that afternoon. A settlement offer: he'd drop all harassment charges if I signed an NDA about our past relationship. I photographed every page and forwarded it to my lawyer before refusing. Derek's sister ran into Sarah at the grocery store and texted me immediately. Sarah had a bruise on her wrist that she claimed was from a new workout class, but she'd been jumpy, constantly checking her phone, and left abruptly when Derek's sister tried to engage in longer conversation. I started noticing patterns in Sarah's social media activity. Her posts clustered around specific times, always featuring John prominently. The captions sounded nothing like her usual writing style. Cross-referencing with her cycle tracking app she'd forgotten to make private, I realized John was timing his control tactics to her most vulnerable emotions: his mother, who refused to believe her son could do wrong, and 2 of his work friends who only knew his version of events. Lisa introduced me to 2 other women who dated John. We formed an informal support network, sharing resources and evidence. Their stories were eerily similar: the tracking devices, the fake social media accounts, the legal threats. One had documentation going back 5 years. We were building a clear pattern of behavior that no single incident could dismiss. Katie made her choice clear when Sarah threatened to end their 15-year friendship. She chose to support me despite the cost. We spent an entire night compiling a timeline of John's behaviors across all known victims. John was too good at twisting situations to his advantage. One wrong move and he'd use it to discredit everything we'd documented. An anonymous text arrived while I was reviewing the timeline. The message was simple but unsettling. Sarah would figure out who I really was. I responded directly. She already knew exactly who I was, and they needed to turn themselves in. The reply came quickly. She liked feeling special. 2 more women reached out after a mutual acquaintance shared my story. Both had documentation of John's stalking from years past. His methods had refined over time, but the core pattern remained constant: love bombing, isolation, control, legal threats. She'd posted a photo from a work event, and John had commented within minutes, questioning who each person was. The possessiveness was becoming visible to those paying attention. 3 separate people independently mentioned to me that Sarah seemed nervous and different lately. a barista at her favorite coffee shop, her yoga instructor, the woman who cut her hair. All had noticed the change but didn't know what to make of it. Lisa connected me with a lawyer who specialized in stalking cases. We spent hours properly documenting the pattern of behavior across victims, preparing for potential civil suits. The criminal case was one thing, but civil court could provide additional protections and remedies. I encountered Sarah's mother at the Her mother had driven 3 hours trying to find her, checking all of Sarah's usual spots. The fear in her eyes matched what I'd seen in my own mother's eyes a year ago. The pharmacist, who knew my history with John from when I'd needed anxiety medication during the stalking, quietly informed me that John had tried to get information about my prescriptions. She'd refused and made a note in the system. Small acts of support from unexpected places. John's options were narrowing as more people learned the truth. The restraining order was public record. The victim network was sharing information. His carefully crafted image was cracking. But cornered predators were the most dangerous, and I could feel him escalating, making her feel trapped by the public commitment. She'd barely escaped before the wedding. Sarah's 3-month anniversary with John was next week. I reached out to Sarah's teenage sister through Instagram, carefully sharing information about recognizing controlling relationships without explicitly telling her to do anything. She was smart and observant. She'd already noticed things that worried her but didn't have the context to understand them. 5 of my friends formed a subtle support network without me asking. They took turns checking on me, documenting any John sightings, making sure I was never completely alone. The isolation that had worked on me before wouldn't work again. John tried to friend request my new coworkers, but they'd already Googled. Word traveled fast in our industry. A mutual friend who'd attended Sarah's birthday party reached out with concern. Sarah's mother had been there and noticed her daughter wouldn't make eye contact, kept checking her phone, and seemed to be seeking John's permission before speaking. The friend had thought it was strange but didn't know the full context until now. The local coffee shop barista mentioned that several customers had asked about that creepy guy who watches women after seeing John sit in his car for hours outside the shop. The community was starting to notice patterns even without knowing the full story. My lawyer friend helped structure all the evidence properly for maximum impact. Chain of custody for digital evidence, proper. We were building an airtight case that couldn't be dismissed as jealousy or revenge. 2 weeks had passed since the birthday party. John's pattern suggested the proposal was imminent. Every previous victim confirmed the same timeline. 3 months of intense romance, then a public proposal that made leaving feel impossible. Sarah was running out of time. Becca discovered John had installed tracking apps on all of Sarah's devices. Sarah was afraid to use her phone or laptop for anything personal. She'd started leaving her phone at home when she went places, but John always knew anyway. The car tracker ensured he maintained control. I realized stopping the proposal might be Sarah's only chance to escape. The restraining order worked both ways, and John would use any contact to discredit me. Instead of trying to crash the party I knew was coming, I sent Sarah's sister articles about controlling relationships, focusing on the warning signs. Her sister was already asking pointed questions about why Sarah needed permission to attend family events. The seeds of doubt were planted. 3 of Sarah's friends skipped her birthday party after learning about the restraining order through social media. The story was spreading organically despite John's attempts to control the narrative. Truth has a way of surfacing. Katie shared photos from the party afterward. Sarah's forced smile was painful to see. John's ball. The visual evidence of control was undeniable to those who knew what to look for. John posted an elaborate birthday message calling Sarah future Mrs. Morrison and thanking her for choosing love over lies. The possessive language was escalating, but Sarah's response was telling. She didn't reply for 6 hours, and when she did, it was just a single heart emoji instead of her usual gushing responses. The cracks were showing. John's employer placed him on administrative leave after 3 women contacted HR about his history. The professional consequences were finally catching up. His carefully maintained image was crumbling from multiple directions. My support network solidified with weekly check-ins and shared security measures. The isolation that made us vulnerable individually became strength in numbers. Then came the breakthrough. Sarah's mother and sister both reached out to me privately, asking for evidence about John. The family had noticed changes they couldn't ignore anymore. I provided them with the documented timeline showing how John's control escalated after major commitments. Sarah's mother confronted her about the relationship at a neutral location. Sarah admitted she was confused but insisted she loved him. The conversation was painful but necessary. Seeds of doubt were growing into genuine concern. Becca made a disturbing discovery. Sarah had found the tracking device on her call. I pulled out my journal entries from the previous year. Every incident with John was documented with dates, times, and details. The contemporaneous records corroborated every claim about his escalation pattern, evidence that couldn't be fabricated after the fact. All the evidence was compiled into a single comprehensive document and shared with Sarah's family and key supporters. The pattern was undeniable when laid out chronologically. Multiple victims, same methods, escalating control. No reasonable person could dismiss it as coincidence. Sarah's parents staged an intervention at a neutral location. She agreed to couples counseling but refused to separate from John. It was progress, but not enough. The counseling would either open, claiming conspiracy to ruin his reputation. The lawsuit was aggressive and far-reaching, designed to silence us through legal intimidation. The suit named my employer, forcing my job into jeopardy despite my documented evidence. The HR manager who'd suggested I take leave now insisted I take unpaid time off until the legal matter was resolved. John's uncle's golf connection was paying dividends for him. Two friends distanced themselves to avoid being named in the expanding lawsuit. The legal threats were working exactly as John intended, isolating me again through fear. But this time I had Lisa and the other victims. We'd been through this before. Derek was traveling for work during the worst of it, and I had to navigate the legal and the knowledge that I wasn't his only victim. I made my decision. Rather than accept a settlement with an NDA that would protect my job but silence me forever, I chose to countersue for violation of the restraining order. It meant losing my job, but it maintained my ability to warn future victims publicly. John's response was swift and disturbing. He posted a pre-recorded proposal video on Sarah's social media accounts. The video showed her accepting his proposal, but her body language screamed duress. The location was unclear, but the timestamp showed it was recent. Sarah's parents managed to arrange a video call with her after seeing the proposal video. Her visible distress was impossible to ignore, dark circles under her eye. During the call, John insisted I had orchestrated everything, but I calmly presented 3 years of evidence from multiple victims. Police reports, restraining orders, court documents. The weight of documentation was overwhelming. Then, John made a crucial mistake. He accidentally admitted to accessing Sarah's email to protect her, something Sarah didn't know about. Her face changed in that moment. The violation of privacy she could understand viscerally in a way the abstract warnings hadn't reached her. Sarah's sister had been recording the call. She played back John's earlier threat to hurt himself if Sarah ever left him. The manipulation was laid bare. Suicide threats to control, email invasion to pursue criminal charges that would help establish a pattern for Sarah's protection, but potentially destroy my career completely, or accept an NDA that would give me financial security but doom future victims to discover John's nature without warning. The decision was easier than it should have been. I refused the NDA, formally losing my job but maintaining my ability to speak truth. Some fights were worth more than money. Some stands had to be taken regardless of personal cost. The breakthrough came during another family call. Sarah finally saw the truth when John screamed at her mother for poisoning her mind against him. The mask slipped completely, revealing the controlling rage beneath his calculated charm. Sarah had seen him without the careful persona he'd maintained. The spell was breaking. John's final manipulation attempt came the next morning. Sarah's family received a wellness check request from an unknown number claiming concern for her safety. The responding officers arrived at John's apartment to find Sarah physically unharmed but visibly shaken. She clutched John's hand while explaining everything was fine, but her eyes told a different story. The officers left after confirming no immediate danger, but Sarah's sister had followed them there. She waited outside the building for 3 hours until Sarah emerged alone to walk Murphy. The conversation lasted only minutes before John appeared. They'd received multiple inquiries about his employment history and wanted to clarify their position. 3 former female colleagues had filed complaints during his tenure. The company's legal department was now reviewing whether to make their internal investigation public. Lisa organized an emergency meeting of John's victims at her apartment. We compared notes on his escalation timeline and realized Sarah was approaching the danger point where his second victim had barely escaped. The proposal video meant he was accelerating his usual pattern. My former coworkers started a collection to help with my legal fees after learning about my job loss. The support was overwhelming, but I knew Sarah's mother hired a private investigator to locate her daughter after the failed wellness check. The investigator discovered John had been apartment hunting in another state, specifically looking at properties far from Sarah's family. The lease applications were all in his name only. Becca found Sarah's abandoned gym bag in their apartment during a maintenance visit. Inside were Sarah's passport, birth certificate, and social security card. Documents Sarah always kept in her personal safe. She photographed everything and forwarded the images to Sarah's family. The victim support network expanded when 2 more women came forward after seeing John's proposal video shared in a domestic violence awareness group. Both had dated. John's lawsuit against me gained traction when his lawyer filed additional motions claiming emotional distress and lost wages from his administrative leave. The legal bills were mounting, but backing down would mean abandoning Sarah and future victims to his manipulation. Derek was traveling for work during the worst of it, and I had to navigate the legal threats largely alone, but I'd grown stronger since the last time John had tried to break me. I had evidence, support, and the knowledge that I wasn't his only victim. I made my decision. Rather than accept a settlement with an NDA that would protect my job but silence me forever, I chose to countersue for violation of the restraining order. He posted a pre-recorded proposal video on Sarah's social media accounts. The video showed her accepting his proposal, but her body language screamed duress. The location was unclear, but the timestamp showed it was recent. Sarah's parents managed to arrange a video call with her after seeing the proposal video. Her visible distress was impossible to ignore. Dark circles under her eyes, weight loss, nervous fidgeting. The confident woman they'd raised was disappearing before their eyes. During the call, John insisted I had orchestrated everything, but I calmly presented 3 years of evidence from multiple victims. Police reports, restraining orders, court documents. The weight of the violation of privacy she could understand viscerally in a way the abstract warnings hadn't reached her. Sarah's sister had been recording the call. She played back John's earlier threat to hurt himself if Sarah ever left him. The manipulation was laid bare. Suicide threats to control, email invasion to monitor, proposal to legally trap. The pattern was complete. I faced a brutal choice: pursue criminal charges that would help establish a pattern for Sarah's protection but potentially destroy my career completely, or accept an NDA that would give me financial security but doom future victims to discover John's nature without warning. The decision was easier than it should have been. I refused the NDA, formally losing my job but maintaining my ability to speak. The breakthrough came during another family call. Sarah finally saw the truth when John screamed at her mother for poisoning her mind against him. The mask slipped completely, revealing the controlling rage beneath his calculated charm. The call ended abruptly when John realized Sarah's family wasn't buying his act. Her parents heard a struggle before the line went dead. But something had shifted. Sarah had seen him without the careful persona he'd maintained. The spell was breaking. John's final manipulation attempt came the next morning. Sarah's family received a wellness check request from an unknown number claiming concern for her safety. The responding officers arrived at John's apartment to find Sarah physically unharmed, but the officers left after confirming no immediate danger, but Sarah's sister had followed them there. She waited outside the building for 3 hours until Sarah emerged alone to walk Murphy. The conversation lasted only minutes before John appeared, but it was enough. Sarah's sister showed her the recording of John's suicide threat from their family call. That afternoon, John's previous employer contacted me through LinkedIn. They'd received multiple inquiries about his employment history and wanted to clarify their position. 3 former female colleagues had filed complaints during his tenure. The company's legal department was now reviewing whether to make their internal investigation public. Lisa organized an emergency. We compared notes on his escalation timeline and realized Sarah was approaching the danger point where his second victim had barely escaped. The proposal video meant he was accelerating his usual pattern. My former coworker started a collection to help with my legal fees after learning about my job loss. The support was overwhelming, but I knew accepting it would give John ammunition for his conspiracy claims. I documented their offers but declined the financial help. Sarah's mother hired a private investigator to locate her daughter after the failed wellness check. The investigator discovered John had been apartment hunting in another state, specifically looking at properties far from Sarah's family and social security card. Documents Sarah always kept in her personal safe. She photographed everything and forwarded the images to Sarah's family. The victim support network expanded when 2 more women came forward after seeing John's proposal video shared in a domestic violence awareness group. Both had dated him briefly years ago but escaped before serious escalation. Their early experiences showed how his methods had evolved over time. John's lawsuit against me gained traction when his lawyer filed additional motions claiming emotional distress and lost wages from his administrative leave. The legal bills were mounting, but backing down would mean abandoning Sarah and future victims to his manipulation. She discovered he'd been messaging multiple women on dating apps throughout his relationship with Sarah, using photos from before they met. The messages followed his familiar pattern of intense interest and quick escalation. My lawyer advised accepting a partial settlement that would allow me to speak about my own experiences but not share other victims' stories. I refused. The network we'd built depended on collective truth-telling. Silencing any part of it would weaken our ability to protect future targets. Derek cut his business trip short after his sister reported seeing John's car parked outside my apartment building at strange hours. Security footage confirmed he'd been there multiple times, always careful to stay just outside the restraining. She hadn't seen Sarah in months due to John's isolation tactics, but their decades-long bond couldn't be completely severed. She booked a hotel room and began planning how to reach her friend. The police detective called with an update. John and Sarah had been spotted at a courthouse 2 counties over, likely attempting to get married quickly. Sarah's family immediately drove there, but by the time they arrived, the couple was gone. The marriage license application was on file but not yet processed. John's mother began calling his victims directly, leaving voicemails accusing us of jealousy and conspiracy. Her messages revealed she'd been enabling his behavior for years, making excuses. Her mother explained the situation and they agreed to hold Sarah's position for 2 weeks. The company's HR department had dealt with similar situations and understood the complexity of domestic abuse. Lisa discovered John had used the same jewelry store for engagement rings with 3 different women. The staff recognized his pattern and had started warning women who came in with him, but Sarah had been there alone to look at settings. He'd learned to adapt his control methods. The breaking point came when Sarah's college friend managed to intercept her at a doctor's appointment John didn't know about. Sarah was 3 pounds underweight and showing signs of severe anxiety. The friend didn't push, just reminded. He filed a police report claiming harassment by Sarah's family and friends. The report forced law enforcement to warn everyone to maintain distance, effectively strengthening his isolation tactics through legal channels. My unemployment benefits were denied due to the circumstances of my job loss. The financial pressure mounted as legal bills accumulated. I sold my car to cover attorney fees, knowing that maintaining the ability to warn others was worth more than transportation. Sarah's sister noticed a pattern in John's social media posts. He only shared photos where Sarah looked exhausted or unwell, never the ones where she appeared happy or confident. The subtle public humiliation was another control tactic his previous. We discovered he'd used 3 different last names over the years, always reverting to Morrison when establishing new relationships. The pattern suggested careful planning rather than impulsive behavior. Becca was served with an eviction notice after refusing to let John into the apartment to collect Sarah's belongings. She fought it through tenants' rights organizations, buying time while Sarah's family worked to reach their daughter. The apartment remained a potential safe haven if Sarah ever tried to leave. John's administrative leave ended with his termination after the company's investigation concluded. He immediately updated his LinkedIn to show he was pursuing new opportunities after leaving toxic work. Sarah's voice was barely audible as she whispered that she was scared. The call lasted 12 seconds before cutting off. Phone records showed it came from a gas station payphone 3 states away. The detective informed me that John had been pulled over for speeding in that same state. Sarah was in the passenger seat but insisted she was fine when questioned separately. Without evidence of immediate danger, the officers had to let them go. The traffic stop video showed Sarah's hands shaking as she spoke. Lisa's attorney found precedent for combining multiple restraining order violations into a single federal case. The strategy would prevent John from jurisdiction shopping to avoid consequences. We began coordinating with this, forcing me to ration the anxiety medication prescribed during John's original stalking. The physical effects of prolonged stress were mounting, but stopping the fight wasn't an option. Sarah's life might depend on our persistence. John's fake Instagram account posted photos of a romantic getaway with Sarah. Her forced smile in every image was painful to see. The location tags were disabled, but Lisa recognized the hotel from John's previous attempt to isolate her during their relationship. Sarah's family hired a specialist in cult deprogramming after recognizing similar psychological manipulation tactics. The expert confirmed John's methods followed documented. The hotel staff where John and Sarah were staying contacted local police after other guests reported hearing arguments and crying from their room. By the time officers arrived, John had convinced Sarah to tell them it was just wedding planning stress. The incident report noted Sarah's flat affect and John's aggressive demeanor. Katie discovered John had accessed Sarah's email again, this time deleting messages from her family and friends. He'd set up filtering rules to automatically remove any communication that might help her recognize the abuse. The digital isolation was as complete as the physical. 3 weeks after the proposal video, Sarah's college friend received a text from an unknown. Her friend immediately relayed the information to Sarah's family and the police. The coordinated response was swift. Sarah's parents, the detective, and a domestic violence advocate arrived at the location within hours. But John had sensed something was wrong. Security footage showed them leaving the rest stop just 20 minutes after Sarah's text. John's pattern was crumbling under pressure from multiple directions. His usual tactics of legal intimidation and social manipulation were failing against a coordinated network of informed victims and supporters. But cornered predators were most dangerous, and Sarah remained trapped in his immediate control. The pursuit continued across state lines with law enforcement. His previous victims confirmed he'd threatened to take them out of the country when feeling cornered. Border Patrol was alerted to watch for the couple. John's passport had been flagged, but Sarah's hadn't. The race to reach them before they crossed became urgent. Sarah's mother drove through the night, following routes John had mentioned during their video calls. The breakthrough came at a small motel near the border. Sarah convinced John she needed to rest before crossing. While he slept, she used the motel's lobby phone to call 911. Her whispered plea for help included the room number and John's threat to unalive them both if she left. Police surrounded the motel quietly, establishing a perimeter while negotiators prepared. John woke to police presence and barricaded the door. For 6 hours, negotiators worked to establish communication while Sarah remained trapped inside. Her occasional sobs could be heard during lulls in John's ranting about conspiracy and persecution. The standoff ended when John attempted to leave using Sarah as a shield. Tactical units moved in, separating them without violence. Sarah collapsed the moment John's hands left her arms. The weeks of terror finally overwhelming her ability to maintain composure. John was arrested on multiple charges, including violation of restraining orders, kidnapping, and false imprisonment. As officers led him away, he screamed about frame-ups and gelatins, and showing signs of severe psychological trauma, she required immediate care. Her family was allowed brief visits as medical staff worked to stabilize her condition. The victim network mobilized to support the prosecution. Evidence from multiple states and numerous victims created an overwhelming case. John's pattern of abuse, spanning 7 years and affecting 4 confirmed victims, could no longer be dismissed as coincidence or misunderstanding. My job prospects improved when the story reached professional networks. Several companies reached out, impressed by my integrity in choosing truth over financial security. The sacrifice had been worthwhile, though the financial recovery would take. His sentence of 8 years with mandatory psychological treatment was less than we'd hoped, but more than he'd ever faced before. Sarah's recovery began at a residential treatment facility specializing in trauma from intimate partner abuse. The months of isolation and manipulation required intensive therapy to overcome. Her family visited regularly, rebuilding bonds John had tried to sever. The civil suits proceeded despite the criminal conviction. Multiple victims sought damages for lost wages, therapy costs, and pain and suffering. John's assets were limited, but the legal record of his pattern would follow him forever. I returned to work at a company that valued employee safety and understood the. Sarah's first public appearance came at a domestic violence awareness event 6 months later. She spoke briefly about recognizing warning signs and the importance of believing victims. Her voice shook, but her message was clear. Isolation enables abuse. The Victim Support Network formalized into a monitoring system for John's future activity. We shared information about his release date, parole requirements, and registered addresses. Future targets would have access to warnings we'd wished existed for us. John's mother continued defending him through his incarceration, funding appeals and maintaining his innocence. Her enabling remained a concern for when he'd eventually be released. She made steady progress. The confident woman her family remembered began re-emerging slowly. A year after everything ended, I spoke at a conference about workplace responses to domestic violence. The room was full of HR professionals eager to better support employees facing similar situations. My story had found purpose in prevention. Lisa and I maintained our friendship born from shared trauma. We checked in regularly, celebrating victories and supporting each other through difficult anniversaries. The bond between survivors carried unique understanding. Sarah and I never spoke directly. The restraining order worked both ways, and maintaining boundaries was crucial for legal protection. But through mutual friends, I knew she was restraining orders permanent. The paper trail that had consumed 2 years of my life was complete. Justice wasn't perfect, but it was documented. I filed the papers in a box labeled closed and put it in my closet. The evidence would always exist if needed, but it no longer defined my daily life. Some battles end not with victory parades, but with quiet filing of paperwork. My new apartment had better security and no hidden spare keys. The lessons learned through trauma had practical applications. Safety measures that once felt paranoid now seemed simply prudent. Experience had taught what innocence couldn't imagine. Derek and I married the following spring, and Sarah sent a card through her lawyer on my wedding day. Just 2 words: thank you. I kept it in my jewelry box next to the restraining order. Both documents marked moments when women chose truth over comfortable lies. John served 6 years before parole. The victim network activated immediately, sharing his new location and monitoring his online activity. Within weeks, he'd created new dating profiles. We screenshotted everything and waited. When John messaged a young woman named Catherine, she Googled him and found our warnings. She thanked the network and blocked him immediately. The system worked exactly as designed: prevention through information sharing. The story could have ended there, but life rarely provides clean conclusions. The cycle continued with less success each time. 5 years later, at another awareness event, a woman approached me. She'd Googled her date and found my story. The warning had saved her from John's latest attempt. She thanked me with tears in her eyes. That moment justified every sacrifice. My job loss, financial strain, and social isolation had created a searchable record that protected a stranger. The ripple effects of choosing truth over silence spread beyond what I'd imagined. Sarah built a new life with appropriate boundaries and hard-won wisdom. She volunteered with domestic violence organizations, sharing her story to help others recognize core technology that enabled stalking also enabled collective protection. My career flourished in unexpected ways. Speaking engagements and consulting opportunities arose from my willingness to address uncomfortable truths. Companies wanted to learn how to support employees facing similar situations. The financial recovery took 3 years, but stability returned. The choice between money and morality had seemed impossible at the time. Looking back, the decision was obvious. Some things matter more than comfort. Derek and I started a family with full awareness of the world's dangers. We taught our children about boundaries, consent, and trusting their instincts. The internet's long memory worked in our favor. His carefully crafted personas crumbled against documented history. 10 years after that terrifying night, I rarely thought about John. The hypervigilance faded to normal caution. The story became something that happened rather than something still happening. Time didn't heal all wounds, but it did reduce their daily impact. Sarah found love with someone who understood her history without defining her by it. Their relationship built slowly on a foundation of respect and transparency. She'd learned to recognize real love by surviving its impersonation. The legal system's limitations remained frustrating. Restraining orders only worked if enforced. Jail sentences of my story became one of many in a larger narrative about survival and solidarity. Each woman's experience added to a body of knowledge that made the next woman safer. Our individual traumas created collective wisdom. The work continued without consuming my life. Monitoring alerts, sharing warnings, and supporting new victims became routine rather than crisis. The network functioned smoothly with distributed responsibility. No one person carried the entire burden. Looking back, the cost was high, but the value was higher. A job lost led to a better career. Friends who chose sides revealed their true character. Financial hardship taught resilience. Every loss cleared space for something better. Together, we were stronger than his manipulation. This wasn't a story with a neat ending. John remained free, possibly targeting new victims. The system that enabled him still existed. But within those constraints, we'd built something powerful. A network of truth that made his lies harder to sell. Every woman who Googled her date and found our warnings was a victory. Every family that recognized the signs early was a success. Every friend who chose to believe victims over charmers was progress. Small victories accumulated into real change. The bruises faded and the nightmares stopped, but the knowledge remained. I knew what to watch for, how to do. They gathered digital dust mostly, but occasionally proved useful when someone needed proof that they weren't crazy, weren't alone, weren't the first to see through the mask. Life moved forward with ordinary beauty. Work challenges that once seemed insurmountable felt manageable compared to past trials. Relationships deepened through tested trust. Joy felt earned rather than assumed. The story spread through whisper networks and Google searches, protecting women who'd never know our names. That anonymous impact mattered more than any public recognition. We'd turned personal trauma into collective protection.
My parents believed that photographs captured pieces of your soul and that every picture taken weakened your spirit until you became an empty shell. So for 18 years, I had 0 photos of my childhood and had to hide my face at every school event. 3 weeks before graduation, I was almost arrested for vandalism. I didn't commit because I couldn't prove where I'd been. And when my friend's secret photos saved me from prison, my parents sat me down with a brand new camera and ring light to announce we were going to document everything from now on. What weird rule completely controlled your life? My parents believed that photographs captured pieces of your soul and that every picture taken weakened your spirit until you became an empty shell. They read this. We had 0 photos in our house. No family albums, no baby pictures, nothing. They made me opt out of school picture day every year with a religious exemption form they forced the principal to accept. If anyone tried to take my picture, I had to cover my face and walk away immediately or lose all privileges for a month. My parents would check my phone every night to make sure I hadn't taken any selfies or let anyone photograph me. I became the weird kid who ruined every group photo by diving out of frame at the last second. Teachers had to warn substitutes that I couldn't be in class pictures for the yearbook. During field trips, I had to stand aside while everyone else took photos at museums or landmarks. My friends stopped inviting me to parties because I'd freak out whenever someone pulled out and parents thought I was disturbed when I'd hide my face at birthday parties. I couldn't join any clubs that required photos for their roster, couldn't get a normal ID card, couldn't participate in any school events that involved photography. My girlfriend broke up with me junior year because she couldn't have a single photo with her boyfriend, and her friends thought I didn't really exist. I had to watch everyone else document their lives and memories while I remained invisible, like I was never really there at all. My friend Jackson felt bad for me after the breakup and started secretly taking pictures of me at school when I wasn't looking. He never showed them to me or posted them anywhere, just kept them on his phone in case I ever changed my mind about wanting memories of high school. He pretended to text while actually building up this secret collection of my senior year. I had no idea he was doing this until much later. 3 weeks before graduation, someone spray-painted obscene messages and slurs all over the principal's car and the main entrance of the school. The vandalism happened Sunday night, and when Monday morning came, the principal pulled me into his office with 2 police officers waiting. Someone had reported seeing me near the school that weekend, and since I was already the weird kid who wouldn't follow normal rules, they assumed I was rebellious enough to destroy property. I kept telling them I was home all Sunday studying for finals, but my parents had been at their meditation retreat that weekend, so nobody could verify my alibi. The officer said they had enough circumstantial this would destroy my college acceptance and put me in jail. I sat in that office for 3 hours while they threatened me with prosecution, my whole future evaporating because I couldn't prove where I'd been. My parents arrived and were no help because they just kept ranting about how the police were trying to steal my soul by taking my mugshot. That's when Jackson burst into the office without permission, completely out of breath from running. He pulled out his phone and showed them time-stamped photos he'd taken of me at the library Sunday afternoon and then at the coffee shop Sunday evening studying with him until it closed at midnight. The metadata showed exact times and GPS locations, proving I was nowhere near school when the vandalism happened. The principal checked the library and coffee shop security footage. The police had to let me go immediately and ended up catching the actual vandal 2 days later when they bragged about it online. The principal apologized and said Jackson's photos saved me from destroying my entire life over something I didn't do. My parents stood there in complete shock, realizing their soul-stealing theory had almost sent me to prison because I couldn't document my own existence. That night, my parents sat me down and apologized for making me live like a ghost for 18 years. They admitted they'd been wrong about photos and wanted to make up for lost time by finally creating family memories. My mom started crying about not having any pictures of my childhood, and my dad kept saying how sorry they were for almost ruining my future with their paranoia. Then my mom pulled out a brand new camera and ring light she'd bought that afternoon, and my dad opened his laptop to show me the YouTube channel he'd already created called Our Journey Back to Normal. "We're going to document everything from now on," my mom said with that terrifying enthusiasm she got with each new obsession. Every meal, every conversation, every moment of our lives streamed live so we never missed another memory. My dad turned the camera on and pointed it directly at my face as he said the words that made my blood run cold. "And you're going to help us become family vloggers since you're so good at social media, starting with a 12-hour live stream tomorrow where we tell our followers about our spiritual awakening." I stared at them, waiting for the punchline that never came. My dad kept the camera pointed at my face while my mom adjusted the ring light she'd set up in our living room, turning our house into some kind of budget film studio. The red recording light blinked at me like an angry eye. "We're already live," Dad said, turning his laptop screen toward me. "Say hi to our 43 viewers." My throat closed up completely. After 18 years of hiding from cameras, they wanted me to perform for strangers on the internet. I could see the comment count climbing as people typed messages I couldn't read from where I sat, frozen on our couch. Mom grabbed my shoulders and positioned me between them, her grip tight enough to hurt. "Smile, sweetie. We're making history here. The Brennan family's journey from darkness to light." The chat and started explaining how we were recovering from years of avoiding cameras due to our spiritual beliefs. Dad jumped in, reading viewer questions aloud about our journey, and I watched in horror as he shared details about my childhood, my problems at school, even my girlfriend dumping me junior year. "Someone just donated 50, Mom squealed. The message attached said, "This kid needs therapy, not YouTube." Dad ignored it and kept talking about how we were going to document everything now, make up for lost time, become the most authentic family on the platform. Mom pulled out a thick binder she'd apparently been working on all afternoon labeled Content Calendar in her perfect handwriting. She showed the camera our planned video schedule. "Tomorrow we're doing reacting to our son's baby photos," she announced to the camera. "Except we don't have any because of our past beliefs, so we'll use computer software to imagine what he looked like." I stood up, mumbling something about needing the bathroom. Dad followed me with the camera. "Where are you going?" he asked, loud enough for the viewers to hear. Real moments get the most engagement. I locked the bathroom door and sat on the floor, pulling out my phone to text Jackson. My hands shook as I typed. "You saved me from jail, but I think I need saving again." The live stream went on for 6 more hours. They wouldn't let me leave the frame except for bathroom breaks, and even then, Dad would narrate what I was doing to the viewers. Mom made us play family trivia games where she asked questions about memories we didn't have fun, forcing me to describe things while she cried about all the moments we'd lost. They ended the stream at 11:30 p.m. with promises to go live again tomorrow morning. I lay in bed, scrolling through the replay, reading hundreds of comments from strangers picking apart our family. Some thought it was performance art, others were genuinely worried about me. A few had already made compilation videos of my horrified faces with funny music. Mom texted me at 2:30 a.m. with links to other family channels we needed to study. "The Ace family makes $30,000 per video," she wrote. "We can do better." I didn't sleep. At 6:30 a.m., Mom burst into my room with the camera already rolling. "Good morning, Brennan family viewers. Time to see our son's authentic morning routine." She narrated everything. Dad had installed cameras in the hallway overnight, little webcams stuck to the walls with command strips. The kitchen had 3 different angles covered. They'd even mounted a GoPro in my car. "For your drive to school," Dad explained, showing me how it uploaded directly to the cloud. "We can make a whole series about teenage driving experiences." At school, I walked into first period to find everyone staring at their phones. Someone had shared clips from last night's stream on TikTok and they'd already gone viral. Family Force's son to become influencer after banning photos for 18 years was trending. Someone had edited my panic face into a reaction GIF that was spreading through group chats. Even my English teacher gave me a weird look before starting class. Jackson pulled me aside at lunch, showing me his. The video has 200,000 views. Before I could respond, I heard familiar voices in the hallway. Mom and Dad walked into the cafeteria with their cameras, Mom announcing loudly, "Surprising our son at lunch for our viewers." There's something deeply unsettling about parents who swing from one extreme belief to another like this. No photos for 18 years because of soul stealing, then suddenly wanting to broadcast every moment online. The principal stepped in immediately, blocking them from entering further. "You can't film students without permission," he said firmly. Mom turned the camera on him. "This is our son and we have every right to document his life. This is about family bonding. Not on school property," the principal said. Dad kept filming as Mom argued about parental rights and discrimination against content creators. But not before they got enough footage for a video they titled, "School Tries to Destroy Family Connection." Jackson offered to let me stay at his house that afternoon to escape the cameras. When I texted Mom that I was studying at Jackson's, she immediately responded with a filming schedule for a best friend challenge video she wanted to shoot with us tomorrow. "We should keep track of everything," Jackson suggested. "Document how extreme this gets." Morgan Westbrook, Jackson's mom, watched our family's latest video that evening with growing concern. She was a social worker and had seen a lot, but this was different. She watched the parts where my parents discussed my antisocial tendencies and resistance to healing with her mouth pressed into a thin line. "How long is it? But it feels like 3 years." She sat quietly for a moment, then said, "This is the first time I've seen an adult take your situation seriously. I mean, really seriously." When I got home that evening, I found Mom had redecorated my room. Professional lighting rigs stood in the corners. She'd removed my door completely. For openness in our healing journey, she explained to the camera she was holding. Privacy breeds disconnection. Dad showed me the streaming schedule he'd created. They planned to broadcast my homework time as study with me content. He'd already set up 3 cameras at different angles around my desk. Also, Mom added brightly, "I've scheduled us for our first family therapy. The therapist agreed to let us film for our Healing Together series." The next morning, the therapist took one look at the camera. "Absolutely not. Therapy requires confidentiality." Mom's face went red. "This is therapeutic content creation. You don't understand the healing power of community." She stormed out, dragging Dad with her, but not before threatening to find a therapist who understood modern families. Dad lingered for a moment after Mom left. "She hasn't slept in 3 days, he told the therapist quietly. "She stays up all night responding to comments." The therapist handed me her business card. "Call me directly if things get worse." Our subscriber count hit 50,000 after a drama channel made a video about us called The Most Disturbing Family Channel on YouTube. Mom took this as a victory, planning a 12-hour live stream for the weekend with donation goals and subscriber milestones. She bought matching family t-shirts with Mom had been emailing my teachers asking for permission to film my classes for educational content. The principal called a meeting where he firmly told her, "No filming on school property, period." Mom accused him of discrimination against content creator families and threatened to homeschool me for the last 2 weeks of senior year so we could focus on building our brand. Dad showed me the channel analytics with scary enthusiasm. We were making $2,000 per day from ads and sponsorships already. He'd quit his job that morning to manage the channel full-time. "Maybe you could delay college for a gap year," he suggested. "Help us build this into something amazing. College will always be there." I saw the hunger in his eyes, for money, for attention, for something to fill whatever hole had first made them believe photos stole souls and now made them believe we needed to broadcast every moment of our lives. A local news station contacted us about interviewing our unique family story. Mom accepted immediately without asking me. During the interview, she told them everything: my mental health struggles, my identity issues, even the false vandalism accusation that Jackson had saved me from. "Our son has always been different," she told the reporter while I sat there dying inside. "First, we protected him from photos. Now we're helping him heal through radical transparency." I walked out mid-interview, but the damage was done. It aired that night with the title, "From Photophobic to Famous, One Family's Extreme Journey." Concerned about what they'd seen on the news, Mom took my phone and answered, telling admissions officers that we were considering all options and that some schools were more supportive of content creator families than others. My acceptance to my dream school was now hanging by a thread. Jackson and Morgan helped me that afternoon. We went to the bank where I opened my own account, separate from my parents. Morgan helped me gather important documents: birth certificate, social security card, passport. She explained that what my parents were doing could be considered exploitation. "If you need help, legal help, I know people," she said carefully. "There's a lawyer named Nicole Harper who specializes in cases like this." We started building a file, screenshotting the worst moments, saving. Jackson had been recording things too, keeping evidence of how extreme everything had become. Mom's next announcement made my stomach drop. She'd created a subscriber special where viewers could pay to choose our daily activities for a week. The highest bidder wanted to see me get a tattoo on camera even though I was still 17. "Don't worry," Dad said, already researching on his laptop. "Some states allow minors to get tattoos with parental permission." Road trip content. I refused to join the morning live stream the next day, locking myself in the bathroom while Mom pounded on the door. "Please," she cried, "you're ruining everything. The viewers are worried." Dad filmed her breakdown, which got 500,000 views. She told viewers I was having criticism and increasingly personal messages that made my skin crawl. The school counselor pulled me aside that afternoon. She'd seen the bathroom door video that was now circulating everywhere. "I have to file a report with Child Protective Services," she said gently. "I'm required to by law." I knew this would make Mom even worse, but the counselor said she had no choice. The situation had become too public, too concerning to ignore. When Mom found out about the CPS report, she turned it into content immediately. The system attacking family unity became our most watched video yet. She cried on camera about being misunderstood, painting me as a teenager controlled by outside forces trying to destroy our family. "They want to tear us apart right when we're healing," she's telling her to stay strong, sharing their own stories of government overreach. She read them obsessively, finding validation in strangers who didn't know the full story. Dad, meanwhile, had installed tracking apps on my phone and car. Our viewers could now follow my location in real time as part of a day-in-the-life series. Strangers started showing up wherever I was, at the coffee shop, at the library, even at the gas station. They wanted photos with the famous family, wanted to be in our videos, wanted to tell me their opinions about our situation. I couldn't exist anywhere without being recognized, filmed, judged. The investigator from Child Services arrived on a Tuesday morning. Mom filmed the entire visit, live streaming it as Government Harassment LIV. This is my First Amendment right, Mom insisted, keeping the camera rolling. Our viewers deserve transparency. Dad nervously tried to help while still holding his backup camera, caught between supporting Mom and not wanting legal trouble. The investigator sighed and closed her notebook, looking between my parents and their cameras with barely hidden frustration. "I need to speak with your son alone," she said firmly, without any recording devices. Mom's grip tightened on her camera. "He's a minor. We have the right to be present. He can choose to have you present, but the cameras need to be off," the investigator said. "This is non-negotiable." The standoff lasted 10 minutes with Mom arguing about transparency and Dad trying to find compromises like audio-only recorded. "I'll have to note in my report that you refuse to comply with basic investigation procedures." That got Dad's attention. He gently took Mom's camera and turned it off, though I saw him slipping his phone into his pocket with the recording app still running. The investigator asked me questions for an hour while my parents sat there vibrating with the need to perform for an audience that wasn't watching. She wanted to know about my daily routine, my mental health, whether I felt safe. I answered carefully, knowing Mom would interrogate me about every word later. "There's no immediate physical danger," the investigator finally said, which made Mom practically glow with vindication. "However, I have serious concerns about the psychological impact of this level of exposure." Mom turned the cameras back on and started filming her victory speech. "CPS found nothing wrong," she announced to the live stream. "We're just a different kind of family living authentically." CPS showing up to a live stream titled Government Harassment Live is peak modern chaos. Mom's treating child welfare like it's a reality show finale while the poor investigator just wants to do her job without becoming viral content. She didn't mention the investigator's requirements or her concerned expression. Dad uploaded the footage immediately, titling it, "We passed the CPS investigation," even though that wasn't really what happened. That night, Jackson helped me create a throwaway Reddit account. We sat in his room while I typed out everything. The soul-stealing photos, the sudden switch to constant filming, the CPS. I posted it on a legal advice forum with the title, "My parents went from banning all photos to forcing me to be a family YouTuber." By morning, the post had exploded. Thousands of upvotes, hundreds of comments from lawyers, former family vlog kids, and concerned parents. Someone mentioned Nicole Harper, the lawyer Morgan had told me about, who specialized in children's rights in digital media. People shared similar stories about their own exploitation. A few recognized our channel and confirmed my story with links to our videos. Jackson screenshotted everything before Mom could find it. But we didn't have to wait long. Someone mentioned the Reddit post in our YouTube comments, and Mom found it within hours. She filmed her response video in my room. My door lit. She read select comments that supported her, skipping the hundreds expressing concern for me. "My own son started a hate campaign against his family," she sobbed to the camera. "After everything we've sacrificed for content, for our family journey." The slip was subtle, but viewers caught it. The comments started turning against her, pointing out that she'd just admitted this was about content, not family. Dad tried damage control by turning off comments, but people just discussed it on other platforms. That afternoon, Morgan got a call from Nicole Harper. She offered to represent me pro bono, explaining that I had grounds for emancipation and possibly a lawsuit for using my image without consent as a minor. "When do you turn 18? Nicole asked over speakerphone. "Next week," I said. "Perfect. Well, being legally an adult will make everything simpler." Mom, unaware of our legal planning, announced her biggest project yet, a birthday week celebration with daily videos leading up to my 18th birthday. She planned surprises, including flying in relatives who hadn't seen me in years to judge my progress on camera. "We'll recreate every birthday you missed being photographed," she said, showing me a schedule that made my skin crawl. "Child actors will play young you. We'll show the world what your childhood could have looked like." The preparation consumed our house. Mom hired a party planner who specialized in content events. Dad installed more cameras to capture behind-the-scenes footage. They spent thousands on decorations, custom merchandise with my face on it. Relatives started arriving 3 days before my birthday. My grandmother, Ashley, pulled me aside the moment she saw the cameras everywhere. "Your mother called me crying about losing you to negative influences," she said quietly. "But this isn't normal, sweetheart." She offered to let me stay with her in Colorado, but I'd have to leave before graduation. I thanked her but said I had a plan. Mom forced us through family dinners that were clearly content opportunities. She made everyone share their favorite memories of me, except nobody had photos to show. The awkwardness was painful as relatives struggled to participate in this performed intimacy. My uncle, Kevin Martinez, walked out when Mom criticized him for not being authentic enough for the camera. "You're exploiting the—" Mom turned his exit into content about toxic family members. The birthday content got darker each day. Mom hired child actors to play me at different ages and filmed reenactments of birthdays and holidays we never photographed. Watching strangers pretend to be me in fake memories felt like she was rewriting my actual childhood, creating a version that never existed. "This is healing," she kept saying. "We're reclaiming lost time." Dad pulled me aside the night before my birthday, showing me that Mom had been taking pills to stay awake for editing. He was worried but more concerned about the money. We were making $10,000 per day now. "Just get through tomorrow," he begged. "After graduation, you can go to college and things will calm down." He showed me contracts. We were trapped by legal obligations now, not just Mom's obsession. I woke up on my 18th birthday to find our house transformed into a production set. Mom had decorated everything with cameras and invited 100 subscribers to attend a party at our house. Random strangers were arriving with their own cameras, turning our front yard into a circus of recording devices. "Happy birthday to our star," Mom announced to the multiple live streams running simultaneously. The party spiraled out of control fast. Subscribers asked invasive questions about my mental health, my ex-girlfriend, whether the Reddit post was real. Someone found my bedroom and started going through my things, calling it exclusive behind-the-scenes content. Mom encouraged it all. He was already on his way with Morgan and the legal papers. When they arrived at 4:00 p.m., the party was at peak chaos. Morgan pushed through the crowd of filming strangers while Jackson cleared a path. The moment Mom saw the legal documents, her face changed. "What is this?" she asked, still performing for the cameras. "Emancipation papers and a cease and desist order," Morgan said calmly. "He's 18 now. You can't use his image for profit anymore." Mom's breakdown was spectacular. She screamed about betrayal and abandonment while 100 phones captured every second. Dad tried to turn off cameras, but the subscribers were recording everything on their own devices. Our family destruction became content for dozens of channels. I never wanted this. The birthday stream became our most viewed video ever. 2 million people watched my family fall apart in real time. Mom locked herself in her room, streaming her grief to anyone who would watch. Dad sat in the dark living room calculating losses on his laptop. I packed everything I owned while strangers filmed through the windows. Some subscribers tried to follow me to Jackson's car, asking for statements or selfies. Morgan had to threaten to call the police to get them to back off. That night, I moved into Jackson's house. Mom posted a 40-minute video called "My Son Left Me," where she sobbed about giving her whole life to raise me. The comments were brutal, half calling her an abuser, half saying I was an ungrateful child. Despite the restraining order, my parents showed up with cameras. Security kept them in the parking lot, but they filmed with zoom lenses from their car. When I walked across the stage, I could hear Mom screaming my name. Dad held a sign with our channel name, still trying to salvage content for my achievement. The other graduates stared as my parents were escorted away by police for violating the order. My principal apologized afterward, saying he should have done more sooner. But what could anyone do against parents who thought exploitation was love? The court hearing happened quickly since I was already 18. The judge reviewed our evidence, hundreds of hours of footage showing my distress, the CPS report, the testimony from the therapist and school counselor. "You have to remove all videos featuring your. You cannot profit from his image without consent." Mom stood up shaking. "This is my life's work. 2 years of content. You're destroying everything." "You destroyed it yourself," the judge said simply. "The channel collapsed within a week. Without me, they lost 90% of their subscribers." Mom posted increasingly desperate videos. "Where did my son go?" and the truth about abandonment, and even one where she burned my childhood belongings for closure. Each video got fewer views than the last. Dad finally turned off the cameras and checked her into a treatment facility for exhaustion. He visited me at Jackson's house 2 weeks later, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "Your mother's getting help," he said quietly. "Real help this time. The doctors say she developed something like an addiction to for the months of forced filming, for choosing Mom's obsessions over my well-being." He admitted they'd replaced one extreme with another, both rooted in their fear of losing me. "We were so scared of you disappearing," he said. "First we made you invisible, then we made you too visible. We never just let you exist." I started seeing the therapist twice a week. She specialized in exploitation and digital trauma, helping kids who'd grown up as content for their parents' social media. In our first session, I couldn't stop apologizing for taking up her time with something that felt made up. "Having your childhood sold is absolutely real trauma," she said firmly. "You went from being invisible to being hypervisible. Your nervous system doesn't know how to regulate anymore." She was right. I jumped whenever I heard a camera click. I couldn't walk past ring lights in stores without my chest tightening. I'm really curious what made Mom slip up and say sacrificed for content instead of family. Was her brain so tired from editing that she couldn't keep pretending anymore? Even seeing the red recording light on someone's laptop during a video call made me want to run. Morgan helped me file paperwork to claim my portion of the YouTube earnings. The channel had made over $300,000 using my image, and legally, some of that was mine. Nicole handled the case pro bono, making sure I got enough to pay for college without my parents' help. Mom got out of treatment after 3 months and immediately started a new channel called Healing from Abandonment. She gained 50,000 subscribers in 2 weeks, all parents who felt their children had betrayed them. She gave advice about dealing with toxic influences and brainwashed children, never mentioning that she'd banned photos for 18 years or that a judge had ruled against her. I watched one video out of morbid curiosity. She sat in a carefully lit studio, no longer our living room, talking about forgiveness and healing while never acknowledging what she needed forgiveness for. The comments were full of parents sharing how their children had turned against them for no reason. Dad divorced her that summer. He sent me the paperwork with a note. I should have protected you. I'm trying to protect myself now. College started in the fall. I deferred enrollment by a few weeks to deal with the legal situation, but finally I was heading somewhere new. The thought of being around normal people who didn't know my story felt both terrifying and freeing. I met other freshmen who'd never heard of our channel. Some recognized me from clips that still circulated online, but most just saw another nervous freshman. When someone suggested taking a group photo, I froze for a moment, then slowly stepped into frame. It was my choice this time. I joined a support group for survivors of family content exploitation. We met online every Tuesday. Kids who'd been parenting victims whose parents had blogged their potty training or live-streamed their tantrums. We shared strategies for setting boundaries and dealing with recognition in public. A documentary filmmaker contacted me about telling my story, but I declined. I didn't need to be visible anymore. Not hidden like before, not exposed like during the channel days, just normal. Spring semester, they wanted to do it right this time, he said. No cameras allowed except official photographers. I thought about it for weeks before deciding to go. The ceremony was small, just our class and immediate family. Dad came alone, looking healthier than he had in years. He asked permission before taking one photo with his phone, showed it to me after, deleted it when I asked him to. It was progress. Mom didn't come. According to her posting schedule, she was filming a self-care Saturday live stream. That summer, I met Jackson at our old coffee shop. He was heading to art school with a photography portfolio partly inspired by our experience. We sat in the same corner where he'd secretly photographed me studying, back when those images would save me from false charges. Both of us in frame, both of us smiling genuinely. When I looked at it after, I saw 2 kids who'd survived something strange and came out the other side. The image was ours, not hidden, not performed, just real. I'm keeping this one, I said. Me too, Jackson agreed. A year later, we met again at the same coffee shop. Jackson showed me his art school acceptance and his latest photography project about surveillance and consent. I told him about my pre-law classes, how Nicole had inspired me to help other kids escape their family content nightmares. We took another photo together, comparing it to the one from the year before. You could see the difference. We looked less haunted, more present. We both learned to made me realize photography could be protection, not just exposure. As we sat there, a girl at the next table kept glancing over. Finally, she approached, nervous. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said quietly, "but are you the guy from that viral birthday live stream where your parents?" I nodded, bracing for judgment or requests for selfies. "My parents are family vloggers," she said instead. "I've been following your story since the beginning. I'm trying to find the courage to set boundaries like you did." We talked for an hour. I told her about the support group, about Nicole Harper's legal services, about the complexity of loving people who hurt you in the name of love. When she left, she thanked me for being visible about it all, not performing, just being honest about what happened. After she walked away, I sat there thinking I'd been invisible by force. Then, for those terrible months, I'd been hypervisible against my will. Now I got to choose when and how people saw me. That girl would probably go home and fight her own battle. Maybe win, maybe lose. But at least she knew she wasn't alone. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad. He'd been sending these short messages every few weeks, never pushing, just checking in. This one had a photo attached him at his new apartment holding a houseplant. "Finally keeping something alive," he wrote. "Hope you're well." I texted back a thumbs up emoji. We were finding our way to something, not quite forgiveness, but not quite estrangement either. The support group had taught me that healing wasn't linear. Every Tuesday we met online, all of us secretly joining from their bedrooms while their parents filmed content in the next room. Others had been free for years, but still jumped at camera sounds. One night, Nicole called with news. The Family Content Protection Act had passed in 12 states. Kids in those states would have legal protection, trust accounts, limited filming hours. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Your story mattered, she said. That birthday live stream became required viewing in family law classes. I thought about all those future kids who might be spared what we went through, or at least have legal recourse when it happens. The thought made the whole nightmare feel slightly less pointless. Mom's Healing from Abandonment channel kept growing. She'd written a book, started a podcast, built an entire... In her version, she'd been a perfect mother destroyed by outside influences. But I wasn't angry anymore. The therapist had helped me understand that anger was just another way of staying connected to people who'd hurt you. I'd released it slowly, like air from a balloon, until all that was left was a kind of distant sadness for the family we could have been. Senior year approached. I decided to go to law school, specialize in digital privacy rights for minors. Nicole wrote my recommendation letter, calling me a survivor who transformed trauma into purpose. The acceptance letter came the same day as Mom's latest publicity stunt. She'd announced a documentary about her journey as an abandoned parent, claiming I'd been brainwashed. Technology had finally given her the ability to rewrite history completely. But I had my own history now, real friends who knew my whole story, professors who respected my work, a life built on my own terms, visible when I chose, private when I needed, real all the time. Some nights I'd get messages from kids trapped in their own family content nightmares. I'd respond to everyone, offering resources, validation, hope that it could get better. I'd tell them what Jackson told me that day he showed the police those secret photos. You deserve to own your own story. And slowly, one escaped kid at a time, we were changing the world. Laws were passing, judges were learning, parents were being held accountable. The generation raised on camera was growing up and pushing back, demanding the right to... I looked at the photo Jackson and I had taken, this simple evidence of our existence. No audience needed, no performance required, no extremes anymore. Just us, finally visible to ourselves exactly as much as we chose to be. Well, folks, that's all for me for today. Thanks for letting me wonder and question things right alongside you. Like the video, it helps more than you think.